And so I just can't understand when someone tells me to get out of Deion's rear end. And who cares? Like, he's the single greatest thing that's happened to college football, in my opinion, in decades. Like, I'm a Michigan fan, and I want Michigan to win a national championship. But honestly, I'm more interested in the Colorado Buffaloes. And you could never say before Deion got there that the Colorado Buffaloes are good for college football. And you may never say that ever again when he leaves. And he's going to leave.
Welcome, first-time listeners and returners to the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. What about fucking Colin? Why does he not have a fucking job? Because he's still being whiteballed. Why is Tom not speaking out about that? He should be his biggest fucking ally. And he hasn't said one fucking thing. A lot of people that have come on this show, I don't know why, they've gotten some good fucking jobs afterwards. Jim Rome in the jungle. It's right here in the Sports Deli, baby. We got some good ass karma right here. Let's fucking go.
I love it.
Man.
I love it.
We hope you enjoy today's show, everyone.
All right, let's rock and roll. So today's podcast is brought to you by my Amazon shop. Check it out at amazon.com/shop/the Sports Deli. And you can see all the products that I've done videos on, my idea list, and my shoppable photos. I may make a commission on any of the things that you watch or see, but it's at no extra cost to you. Enjoy today's show. Do we have to refer to him as Mr. Duncan? Like, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, please, I'm very formal, Secretary Duncan.
There you go. Exactly.
Just put a sir on the end of it. Secretary Duncan, sir.
All right, here we go. Let's do this. Hey, everyone. Hoot, host and producer of the Sports Daily Podcast. Let's get right to it. Shout out to the Howard University Bison and to the late Muhammad Ali. Rest in paradise, bro. And Steph Curry and HBCs. Shout out to Neon Deion, primetime Deion Sanders, which is the subject of today's special edition podcast of the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table. If you haven't joined us before, I discuss the intersections between race and sports, mental health, leadership, equality, social injustice, and white privilege. So I've had a little bit of time to listen to other talking heads, to other podcasters. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, talked to some friends, colleagues, and I just want to share with you my opinion about primetime. First of all, congratulations to the Colorado Buffaloes and to Jackson State for giving him an opportunity to coach when it's very difficult for people of color to attain these types of levels, as there is a very small percentage of people of color in leadership positions at Division One institutions, and in particular football. It's still a very low percentage. And like, I just cannot understand for the life of me, if you have any understanding of the history of sport and the history of this country and the implicit bias that occurs, and you couple that with the good old boy network and how many white people are still in leadership positions, hiring people because it's comfortable. They want to be around people that are comfortable. But the problem is, these types of things have been exposed. Why? Because of NIL, because of free agency, aka the transfer portal, and because the landscape of intercollegiate athletics has changed, including the formation of what I call superpowers or super conferences, which is going to drown out the mid majors and the low majors. And these super conferences are the ones that are making the money. Television revenue, and there are other reasons. And I find it somewhat comical and disingenuous, and it pisses me off when I hear people criticizing Deion. Let's first establish the fact that he was one of the greatest athletes ever in any sport. Like, I think at one point in 1 week he hit like a home run for the Yankees and ran back a touchdown. I don't know if it was for the Falcons or it was for the Cowboys. I can't remember. But people don't even remember the fact that he was a two-sport athlete, similar to Bo Jackson and, Drew Henson, and there were a few others. Drew Henson, incidentally, was on our show, by the way, and had similar criticisms. He and his wife had similar criticisms of Tom Brady that I've had for a while now. But I just can't for the life of me understand how people, white people in particular, are not on the Deion Sanders bandwagon. Like, there are NFL players that are tweeting that maybe players at certain colleges should leave where they are and consider going to play for Deion. But there's still a lot of criticism and a lot of skepticism. And Deion confronts this in press conferences. He's questioning people, do you believe now? And there's people that refuse to jump on board. There are some that believe in him, but it is so difficult, as Jim Trotter said, for people of color to get jobs. It's so difficult. And we've all witnessed it, whether or not we've turned a blind eye to it. And, Jim Trotter was in the news recently for a split second. But there should be more attention given to the lawsuit that he filed because it's against the Bills owner and Jerry Jones in particular. And I'm going to go on record in saying, and I've told him this, that I 100% believe him, that those two white good old boy network owners, I'm sorry, I believe Jim Trotter. And it's the same thing and if you listen to my interview with Jim Trotter, he has some very heartfelt words about this entire space of black coaches. People that have talked to him directly about how frustrating it's been to have to fight their whole careers. When Eddie George can't get a job at Ohio State and he has to start at Tennessee State. Nothing wrong with Tennessee State. Shout out to HBCs. And so I understand that some people just aren't rah-rah kind of people. So I think there's a few different kind of people that are inspired by the hype, whether they're a Colorado fan or not. Some people are just straight statistical people, and they see that he has brought in 4 and 5-star recruits to an HBC with inferior facilities. And I remember when I was recruiting at a small D3 school, I was an associate head basketball coach on the men's side at the time and a head tennis coach at the collegiate level. And at a D3 school, which is non-scholarship, there's need-based and academic-based aid for the incoming prospective student athletes. And I treated it like a D1 or D2 program. I flew all over the country. I went to Pennsylvania. I was in Maryland at the time. I went to Texas. I went to Florida. I went all over the place. And I told those kids that I wanted them to be a part of something bigger than themselves. That they could be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond. And I didn't expect to hear the responses that I heard. And I encouraged them to go visit other places and talk to other coaches and come back and make a final decision one way or the other. But I wanted them to feel good about their final decision. And most of the times they said, hey, I love the school, coach. I got some D1 offers, but I want to go to not only a small school, which is where I was, school about 1,200 kids, with an 8-to-1 male to female ratio, which I'm sure had nothing to do with it. But they were coming for me. They wanted to come play for me. That was what was discussed more times than not. Maybe there was a special major. Maybe they liked the atmosphere. But kids want to go where they know the coach is going to make them a better version of themselves, a much better version of themselves. Now, you add the layers of NIL and the free agency, the transfer portal, and caring about a kid way beyond just their athletic prowess. And that's what kids are looking for. And I'm not saying that any coaches are necessarily out of touch, but Deion's got receipts. And so I get that you may not be a person who gets caught up in the hype, or it's been going on so long that you may be sick of it. I get sick of it too with certain people, but this is different. There's just something different about Deion. Now, this comes on the heels of me thinking about back when he was being considered by the Detroit Lions when he was coming out of college, out of Florida State. And he, at one point, some of you don't remember this, don't even know this, but he said at one point, I'm summarizing, man, I hope the Detroit Lions do not draft me because I'm going to ask for so much money they're going to have to put me in layaway. wearing the bling. And, at the time, I was like, come on, man. Like, what? Like this guy. And, it was a marketing strategy. He was smart. And the thing that I've thought about recently is, you guys remember Andre Agassi? Great tennis player, beloved, especially by the tennis world in New York. But do you remember what people thought of him early on in his career? He was a complete a-hole. He was literally a complete a-hole. And people didn't like him because he was flamboyant and arrogant, and he was a jerk. He would catch the balls of his opponent's serves in his hand and just throw it to the side instead of tapping it away with his racket if it was a fault, if it was a bad serve. And he was just, he was a punk. He was a little BA. But people accepted him later because of his transformation from the long hair to the baldness to his appreciation of the game of tennis, his love for the fans. And I've asked him to come on the show. And he actually said he was interested in coming on the show. He's just been busy. So shout out to Andre Agassi. But there's a lot of people that are hating on Deion Sanders. And I just don't get it. No matter if you're not a rah-rah guy or you're just a straight statistical person and you like want receipts, like how many more receipts do you need? Does he need to win a national championship? Like what he's done, in my opinion, and I've been following sports for a long time, and I think I have a pretty good sense of and the nuances to sports. Now, I was never a professional athlete, but I did play against professional athletes when I was in college in front of a lot of people. And I know what it takes to not only play at that level, but the work ethic that it takes to not only play at a certain level, but coach at a certain level. And I've said this all along. And one of my friends is the women's basketball coach at Georgia Southern, Anita Howard. And she was at a D2 school before she went to Georgia Southern. And I think the last year before she was hired by Georgia Southern, she won 32 games. Don't quote me. And I've always said, you could win 20 to 24 games if you're lucky as a coach at the college level in basketball. And same thing goes with football. Like you could win 8, 9, maybe even 10 games if you have a few good players. But you can't win 32 games if you're lucky. You have to know how to coach. And that includes from the day you recruited kids to the culture to bringing them together to getting them to believe in themselves and one another to everything. And in football, if you're going to win 11 or 12 or 13 games, sometimes 14 games, that's a different level. Now, is Deion going to get to that level? I don't know. But all I know is he didn't have to do any of this. He could have probably been an assistant at the professional level if he wanted to for a long time. And he wanted to impact these kids' lives, these young kids' lives. And so I just can't understand when someone tells me, and this has happened recently, to get out of Deion's rear end. And who cares? Like, he's the single greatest thing that's happened to college football, in my opinion, in decades. Like, I'm a Michigan fan, and I want Michigan to win a national championship. But honestly, I'm more interested in the Colorado Buffaloes. And you could never say before Deion got there that the Colorado Buffaloes are good for college football. And you may never say that ever again when he leaves. And he's going to leave. He's going to leave. He's either going to get that Florida State job or he's going to get a Power 5 job that's better than Colorado. And how you can't be excited, like even when you were a Kobe hater or whether or not you hated Jordan or you hated LeBron. I don't know how many people hated Larry. And nobody hated Magic. And if you hate Deion, the reality is he is not only good, he is not only great, he has literally single-handedly transformed college football. He is phenomenal for college football. So anyways, I'm all in. I got to get a primetime shirt. And so I've been looking. I got to get one because I have a lot of shirts of a lot of different people. But he's got his players wanting him to spend additional time during practice time or after practice time to help them with some of the nuances that made him one of the best athletes that has ever lived. And so that's how I know he's having an impact on them because he's not only bringing them together to be a great team now, and I know TCU lost some players, and we're not going to come in here in the comments and minimize what he did against TCU and that Nebraska has sucked for years. They can't figure out their coaching situation. They can't figure out things on the field, and that wasn't a good win either. Let's see what they do against USC. Okay, fair enough. Let's see what they do against USC. But his son is a top 5 pick. He's legit. And Travis Hunter is legit. Like literally legit. And he turned down $1.5 million supposedly to uh, go to Jackson State, and he's going to be rewarded handsomely for it when he's a top 5 pick also in the NFL draft when he decides to bounce. So, anyways, I don't know, man. It just, you hear the Jason Whitlocks and you hear people that I know and others that are sick of talking about Deion. Man, I haven't had enough of it. I could talk about it all day, every day, even if they lose a game and they go 10-2 or like, do you know where Buffalo was last year? You know where they've been perennially for the last couple of decades? I'm drinking whatever it is that Dion is serving. That's all I got to say. And honestly, I want to watch brilliance. I want to, even if I hate them, even if it was if he was at Ohio, the Ohio school, that Ohio school, that Ohio school, I'd be like, man, this guy. Now, it wouldn't be as impressive because the Ohio school always wins. So, like, you're just going to sort of in passing say it's been impressive, it's okay, it's whatever, and not understand the magnitude and the layers of what this means for not only Colorado, for not only all the kids that he's brought in, for himself, for other black coaches. Like, do you know how impactful this could be for other black coaches? Like, this might allow a guy like Hugh Jackson, whose team is much better this year. Like, you can just see the way that they're playing if you follow Grambling State. This might allow him to get a better job if that's what he's looking to do because of Dion. This might allow Eddie George to get back to Ohio State one day sooner than anticipated. But the reality is that a lot of black coaches either do not get jobs or they have to start at a much lower level than their white counterparts. And that's just the reality of the situation. So what Dion is doing has a ripple effect and ramifications far beyond what he's doing at Colorado. So, anyways, I'm all in. I love it. The hype during the week, like I've always said that I couldn't coach football because I couldn't stand waiting a week to play the next game. Basketball, you can play the next day if it's a tournament, or you play a couple days later, and then you can forget about a bad loss or a bad season. But football, man, I don't know how they do it. And I know it takes that much time to prepare, and their body's got to recover, and that whole thing. But what Dion's been through personally, also with his physical situation, with his foot and his toes and his leg, and the other thing is, and maybe some of you don't really understand this, there's been a shift in social media when it comes to D1 programs and what they show. And Dion has revolutionized, and a lot of schools do it, but they haven't done it the way that Dion's done it. Like maybe it's just because I have him on my feed all the time, but the way that they film the thoughtfulness at Jackson State and at Colorado with social media has been incredible. Like they film just about everything, whether it's the old woman who's been to like all the games, who never leaves early no matter what the score is, and giving her the game ball, or practices, or him speaking. Like that stuff is powerful. Like I don't know how you could be in business or in any profession and not listen to that and understand how impactful that is. And yeah, you got to have kids. You got to have great players. You got to have 4 and 5 star recruits. But there's a lot of programs that have had 4 and 5 star recruits that haven't done what he's doing in this short of a period of time. So like the social media piece, like the marketing piece has been absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I love watching all his stuff. Like what he says, and I'm not a God-fearing person, but I don't mind when he talks about, his foundation and what motivates him and who he's serving because it's about the message. It's about the message. So I don't know how you guys feel about the entire thing. Um, I guess time will tell. But in my eyes, he's already been a huge success. He's already literally changed the landscape of college football. And I mean, I had said initially that I wanted him to be the Lions coach. Now, we'll see what happens with Dan Campbell. So far, so good. Lions beat a depleted Kansas City Chiefs team on the road, and they have a very favorable schedule this year. Very favorable. So if there's ever going to be a year where the Lions have a chance to knock on the door of their first Super Bowl championship, this would be the year. Um, I also hope that Colin Kaepernick signs with the New York Jets. What a plot twist that would be, that all this hype around Aaron Rodgers was leading us instead to Colin Kaepernick. Man, that would be an incredible story. And it would piss off a lot of people. And the fact that people are commenting that he's 35 years old, and it's like, you actually are making my argument for me. You know how much rest he's had? You know how in good a shape his body is? He hasn't been beat up the last several years. Like, he's ready. And he's been training. He's prepared himself and stayed in shape. So shout out to Colin Kaepernick, whose jersey I'm pointing to right over here. And I really hope that he gets a shot. And you can't tell me that he's not better than Zach Wilson. Like, you just can't. Like, you just can't make that argument for me. So great win for the Jets. But you can't make that argument. I'm sorry. Even if he has to dust off a little bit of rust. So those are my thoughts for the day. I don't think we truly understand yet the magnitude and the impact of what Deion Sanders is doing and what it's going to have on college football going forward, because we don't really know the end of this chapter and where these chapters are leading. But all I know is I'm all in. Prime time. Prime time. Prime time. I love it, man. I love it. And Dion, I know you'll probably never come on this show, man, but you got an open invitation to come on my show anytime. And I know I don't move the needle, but just know that this white dude right here, this older white dude, unlike the Jerry Joneses and the Tom Bradys and the Aaron Rodgers and the Troy Aikmans and the Tony Romos and the Eli and Peyton Mannings, I support you 100%. Not that they don't support you, because obviously Tom Brady worked with your son. But I'm just saying, we don't hear them coming out and talking about the issues that are still going on in society today, individually or collectively. And shout out to those NFL quarterbacks that did that video on mental health. So I just want to finish with this. That was an amazing video that they did. But I sure would like to see those same white quarterbacks be better allies in the space of Black Lives Matter. And please do not comment about Black Lives Matter, the group, which you guys still are providing false narratives when it comes to some of the things that you guys are talking about when it comes to Black Lives Matter. You have not done your research, and you cannot provide receipts. You're just listening and reading tweets about things that you think you know about people that founded Black Lives Matter. Having said that, I'm just talking about Black Lives Matter and the fact that there are still unalivings of people by police. There are still profiling by police. There are still horrendous situations and disproportionate things that are happening to the black and brown community on all levels. Healthcare, housing, education, the prison system, including solitary confinement, you name it, it's still happening. So I would like to see those white quarterbacks do more in this space. But again, I came on here today really not necessarily talk about Colin, but I would like to see Colin get another chance. And I didn't necessarily come on here to talk about Jim Trotter, but if you haven't seen what Jim Trotter's lawsuit is about, I encourage you to do so. He was on our show as well. So shout out to Jim Trotter. I believe him 100%. I had another Hall of Famer on my show who called out another Super Bowl champion coach as a flat-out racist. Look, these old school guys, you can say you can wrap your head around it, but it has directly and indirectly impacted gentlemen of color and women of color the opportunities to be in leadership positions, namely as athletic directors, owners, head coaches in both basketball and football, more in football than in basketball, especially at the Division I level. And people like Deion Sanders are making it easier. Social media is making it easier because social media is, in my opinion, one of the best things that has ever happened to the black and brown community, because it continues to expose the things that used to be hidden and lied about time after time. And so you should be a huge fan of social media. You should be a huge fan of people like Eddie George and Hugh Jackson and Deion Sanders who don't have to coach. They got a lot of money. They got a lot of money. But they're out here coaching, having to start, and in Hugh Jackson's case, was dealt a horrendous staff and hand at a couple of the places that he was because he's a phenomenal coach and he should be coaching in the NFL. And I know there will be people that disagree with that, but I don't care. Hugh Jackson's a phenomenal coach. There are a lot of other black coaches that should have had head jobs and kept head jobs in the NFL as well. And they were let go at a much earlier clip than their white counterparts. But what Hugh Jackson and Eddie George and Deion Sanders are doing are going to make it much easier for other coaches of color to climb that ladder a lot faster. In particular, Deion Sanders. And I think he knows that. He knows how important it is that he succeeds. And Deion's just going to be Deion. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And if you don't love it, you should look in the mirror and ask yourself why. Because what he's doing is not only good for Colorado, but it's phenomenal for college football. Go Buffs. Until next time, this is Hootie Hoot. Would love for you to subscribe, like, comment, share this, and if you want to send me any feedback, I'd love to hear about it. thesportsdeli@gmail.com, thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Much love. Peace. Thanks again for joining us today, everybody. If you get a chance, go to ifnotforthem.com. If you're interested in this shirt, for those of you watching on YouTube, you can purchase this shirt. Feel free to send me an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com. Also, check out my link tree. It's /Mike Hootner. Also, like to thank a few people. 40 Tons brand is a socially conscious cannabis brand, and they're doing amazing things. Check them out. We'd also like to thank Moolah Kicks, the first ever female brand basketball shoe in the history of the world. We'd also like to encourage you, if you're having a hard day and if you're feeling like you just don't want to live anymore, all you have to do is dial 988 from any phone, and there will be someone there 24/7, 365. So don't feel like you have to fight this battle alone. Don't forget to do your self-breast and self-testicular exams every month. It's really important, as early detection is the key. Remember, Black Lives Matter. Reach out to your local and state politicians for any individual or group that you feel are being marginalized. Stop the bullying. Stop the Asian hate. Let's end gun violence with common sense laws. Let's be allies for the LGBTQIA+ community. And I challenge those of you in the white space to be anti-racist, to be bridges and vessels, to help bridge the gaps between black and white America. And remember, until next time, it takes a village, everyone. Much love.